as I was saying a moment ago, that was a discussion of you kept the property, the person kept it, became incapacitated. But now I'm saying, now say property needs to be sold. I just want to cover two things very quickly. One might not apply to any of you because I'm assuming all of you are Hawaii residents. But say you decided to move to the mainland and you kept your Hawaii property. Be aware that there is something called the HARPTA, which is a withholding tax. So if you are not a resident of Hawaii, there will be an automatic holdback of a percentage of the sales price. So sometimes people think, oh, I'm going to get all this money, not realizing that escrow has to hold back this percentage. Now you might be entitled to the refund, but you're going to have to file that income tax in order to get the refund. The other tax that comes up on sale is something called the conveyance tax. And in the state of Hawaii, whenever there is a transfer of real estate, there is always the possibility of a conveyance tax. If it falls under an exemption, then no tax. But otherwise, transfer of property subject to conveyance tax. In the past, it was super small. Nobody worried about it. But I will tell you, again, as time has gone on, the rates have gone up with the goal of, the government capturing more tax on the transfer of real estate. This is now the island of Hawaii. We only got 2 more topics. So this is what happens when someone passes away. And I said earlier, if they were incapacitated, they own the property as a tenant in severalty, we'll need a conservatorship. But if the person dies owning the property individually as a tenant in severalty, there would need to be a probate. I mentioned there's some ways to get around that. It could be hold a trust or an LLC, or you can do what's called a transfer on death deed. And this is another fairly new law that Hawaii passed. So prior to the passage of this law, you couldn't really say, when I die, I want this property to go to this person. Now you can say that with other things. I'm sure many of you have life insurance policies and you can designate a beneficiary. Maybe you have savings bonds and you can designate a payment on death beneficiary. But real estate before, you couldn't do that until this law passed. Now, if you wanted to, you could say, when I die, this is the person I want to become the owner of the property. So it's a special deed. Now this deed is revocable. Just because today you say, I want to give it to my oldest son, and then 3 years later you go, change my mind, I want to give it to my youngest daughter, it's fine. Because the transfer on death deed does not take effect until you die. And if you decide to sell the property in the meantime, you can sell it. And you don't need to get the signature of the beneficiary under this deed. Now that's a big difference than what some people used to do years ago, which was called a life estate and a remainder. A lot of people used to do that before. And parents would say, okay, I give my kid the remainder, but I reserve a life estate. I reserve the ability to use it during life. Now, under those circumstances, if the parent changed their mind, they need the child who they designated to actually sign papers. So this is a good thing, a very flexible technique. Okay, I also mentioned the joint ownership. Remember I said how This applies both to joint tenancy and tenancy by the entirety. If a person passes away and they own the property in this form, it goes to the survivors. No questions. It just, by what we call it, by operation of law. And if you have multiple joint owners, say the 3 advisors in the back all decided to buy an apartment together and they own it joint tenancy, and then one of them passes away, then the other 2 become 50% owners of the property. And then I talked about the revocable trust, and that is probably the most common way that people try to avoid the probate, is they put the asset in the revocable trust. The last topic is going to be the estate tax. So let's say you did good planning and there was no probate, the person passed away. Real estate is very valuable. So real estate could create an imposition of an estate tax here in Hawaii. Now, many of you might have heard that the federal estate tax exemption is extremely generous right now. It is currently, the federal, let's talk federal first, is $12.92 million. I mean, most people, that's like, I forgot, less than 0.5% of people in America own that much money, or assets, excuse me. But the state of Hawaii has a lower exemption. So this is important to know because in the past, Hawaii and the federal were the same. But in 2018, Hawaii said, nope, we are going to decouple. We have our own now, and we're going to do it our way. So at that time, Hawaii said, we are going to freeze what the current exemption is, which is $5.49 million. Okay? That's also very generous, right? Most people, maybe not less than 0.5, less than half of 1%, but you know, it's still, there's a lot of people who, of course, have less than that. But I will tell you what's interesting is during that period of the pandemic, there were bills to reduce the Hawaii exemption down to $1 million. And if you own real estate and you've been looking at your real property tax assessment, and you got some life insurance, and you've got some investments that these guys are doing, you know, are managing for you, and $1 million does not go very far. There were lots of pushback. So people were saying, hey, you know, you got to do other things. And ultimately, that bill died. It kind of went back and forth. And then, as you know, Hawaii did better. We did a better recovery than we might have anticipated over the pandemic and the like. But to me, what that shows me is that since the decoupling, Hawaii can always change it. So it is an important thing to consider. It might not apply to you right now, but who knows? Who knows where the law will ultimately be, and who knows where the value of your assets might be. Because real estate in Hawaii has traditionally appreciated at significant rates. So that's all I say about the primary reason why I wanted to bring that up is just so that when you hear things in the news and you're focused on the federal, remember Hawaii has its own estate tax. Let me just go over again the 8 topics. First, Oahu forms of ownership. Second, Kaho'olawe system of recordation. Real property taxes. Transient accommodation tax. Management upon incapacity of owner. taxes on sale, transfer on death of owner, and estate tax. So thank you again for your time today.